So this is a meeting of the trustees of the trust funds for Ashland, New Hampshire. I am joined with Walter Durack, who is the other trustee of the trust fund, making us a quorum. And we have for the public, Kathleen DeWolf is also present. Our meeting is starting at 8:17 p.m. and it is late because Walter is a firefighter and EMT, and he had to go out on a call at 6:17, and he has made it back. So this is a posted meeting, and we are having it at this time. Walter, he is present. There's a couple of things that we need to get done. I have my notes here, and unfortunately, the glasses to see things on the screen is one pair of glasses, and the glasses to read is another. So, the first thing, Walter, do you have a paper copy of your oath of office?
I do not yet, Amanda.
Okay, when you get that signed, you know, you'll have a signed from either Eli can sign it, I guess, or Patsy signed mine. I need a scan of that.
Sure.
ASAP. I think Wells Fargo may need that to prove that you're. So that's paperwork that we need for that. As far as when we meet, as I just have a few various things to get through. As far as when we meet as trustees of the trust funds, what works for you? I had originally thought that since we are both Scribners, we would meet as a second meeting after the Scribner meeting. I think that may be pushing things because at least for the foreseeable future, we are going to have a lot on our plates, both at Scribner as well as with the trust fund. So I think two separate days would even be best. My only, I do not want our meetings to be the same day and time as the Board of Selectmen meetings. That's where I draw. They can't be the same. So what works well for you? Our Scribners are the second Monday of the month. What works well for the trustees of the trust fund?
Would the fourth Monday work well?
I was thinking the same thing, actually. That would work very well.
Okay.
And I've wanted that set because while this meeting is being recorded, I have talked to Charlie about getting PBTV to be recording all our meetings so that they can go up on the town website.
Okay.
I don't think my private YouTube channel is where the meeting should be anymore. No. It is where I was putting my personal videos of the Scribner meetings, but we can stop that now. Okay. As word of business, I will be attending on this coming Thursday and Friday, the 10th and the 11th. I will be attending the webinar on how to be a town trustee, a trustee of the trust funds, and just by way of inserting into the meeting, you, Walter, are not able to attend because of your work. However, you have access to these recorded webinars.
Yes.
And have been watching those. So very good. And now, without further delay, we need to get officers set up as this meeting goes forward. When the Scribners met, I was voted chair of the Scribners, and Lisa is secretary of the Scribners. And we didn't set a treasurer of the Scribners because we felt there was kind of a consensus among the three of us that whoever is treasurer for the trustees of the trust funds should probably also be the Scribner treasurer because there's some overlap there.
Sure.
Not 100%, but a good deal of it. So going now that we're trustees of the trust funds, I don't really care, Walter, if I'm chair or not. I mean, it was kind of made the most sense for me to be chair of Scribners because I had more of a history there and a learning curve and program going forward ideas. All the chair does is is schedule the meeting and make sure the agenda is out there and posted, which I'm happy to do. So if if you don't mind, I don't mind being chair, but if you want to be chair, I'm not going to, arm wrestle you for it or anything like that. You're welcome to be chair.
Sure.
We need a secretary for the trustees, and we need a treasurer for the trustees. So we also ideally would have a third trustee. So,
Right.
So what we need now at this point in time, particularly for our minutes, and I need the minutes to prove, that we exist. This is part of our paperwork. This is why I've waited an hour something for you, because I was like, we need the minutes so we can get some signatory authority going. We
Sure.
can't wait till Wednesday to meet again with the postings. So going forward, Walter, what office would you like to hold?
Well, I was thinking about it earlier. I think it would be to our benefit if you were to chair the trustees, because of your work with the Scribners.
Okay.
And again, we're not meeting the same time. I'm not trying to mix the business of either two, but there seems to be a logical,
yeah,
similar responsibilities there. And I'm more than happy to be secretary. And when we get a third person, if you'd like that person to be secretary and me treasurer,
okay.
I'm happy filling both roles right now. Sounds like the secretary for procedural reasons is the more important person right now.
Right. So having said that, are you able to take the minutes for this meeting or not?
I am going to watch the recording of this.
Okay.
To take minutes. Is that acceptable?
That is acceptable for me. And keep in mind that the minutes would need to be submitted 5 business days. So Monday, Tuesday, you have until Friday.
Okay. And those would go, if I remember correctly, from the Conservation Commission, they would go directly to the town clerk.
They go to Patsy and CC Mardine Badger on them, because she can post them on the website. I've been talking to Mardine about being sure. I know that the trustees of the trust fund have a tab on the town website. I want Scribner to have a tab as well. And it doesn't seem to be anyone objecting to that. And I want everything out there on the websites. So yeah. And this meeting is being recorded. It's being saved to the cloud. And I'll just be sure that you have access to that.
Perfect.
Very good. So now the first bit or the next bit of business that we need to cover is we, as a quorum, need to, I'm just crossing stuff out that we've done.
Sure.
We, as a quorum, need to vote ourselves signatory authority over all CRFs held by the town of Ashland, as well as all trusts that are held by the town of Ashland. So I'm going to make a motion that, and I guess what you get to second it because you're the second. I'm going to make a motion that we vote ourselves, Amanda Loud and Walter Durack, as signatory authorities over all CRFs of the town of Ashland, as well as all trusts held by the town of Ashland. Do I have a second?
Yes, I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There is no. The ayes were Amanda Loud said aye, and Walter Durack, your vote is?
Aye.
Aye. I forgot that I have to have a roll call when we do it on Zoom. So very good. That has passed, and that will go now in our minutes that we have signatory authority over all CRFs held by the town of Ashland, as well as all trust funds held by the town of Ashland. Now, Walter, you're the one that's had a busy evening. So tell me when you get tired and we can stop this meeting and we can have another one, to finish up our business. I don't want to have you absolutely zonked over all of this.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get lucky and that's my one call for the night, but.
Okay. Well, if you're still have fire going, let's keep going.
Okay.
We are not going to talk about the Scribner Trust at all tonight because, of course, we will discuss that Monday night at the Scribner meeting.
Yes.
The Blake Fund, however, and Memorial Park Fund are the second 2 largest trusts that the town of Ashland holds. And I called up on and got, I probably have been, I got X'd out because it's been, I
Oh, I'm
pulled it
sorry.
up too long ago. Oh, that's my fault. I should have thought of that. Let me sign in real quick and get a balance in the two accounts for the minutes. There we go. So as of the closing today, the Blake Fund had a balance of 63,241.89, and the Memorial Parks balance is 60,811.32. Now, to put things, the funds are growing back from where they were. The Blake Fund was at about 72,000 before March, and so it's down about 9,000 still. The Memorial Park, if I'm remembering my balances correctly, was somewhere around 65,000. It's now at 60, so it's very close to where it was, and that's because it did not drop nearly as much as the Blake Fund did. And of course, the Blake Fund dropped because it's an unbalanced fund. It's 100% equities. It has no bonds at all. So it on the one hand grows the fastest, but on the other hand drops the fastest too. So as we move forward now, Walter, as trustees of the trust funds, I know that we both have opinions on how things are held at Wells Fargo. I've expressed my opinions at the Scribner meeting regarding the Scribner Trust, which is also held at Wells Fargo, and
Sure.
I have similar opinions of Blake and Memorial based on how I'm looking at them. I'm looking at them more from a mathematics viewpoint of seeing the amount of fees that are being charged on this, which is around 1%. The expense ratios are some expense ratios of some of the funds that they're in are over 1%. And
Right.
then there is also advisory fees on top of that. And I'm just feeling that it could be invested better where it's not losing money to these fees. Now, you have more of a background in understanding some of the exact funds that it's invested in as well. So I wonder if you would like to take a moment to express your thoughts on how the things at Wells Fargo are invested.
Sure. So keeping the conversations specifically to the Blake and the Memorial Park funds, I've spent some time looking at what we had in Wells Fargo, how it was being invested, and a couple of things jumped out at me. One, the expense fees, and I'm not really sure what we're getting for those expense fees and the financial advising. 1% is industry standard. It's not out of the realm of what should be charged, but my understanding of a financial advisor is someone who's actively managing your investments funds, someone who you can pick up and call at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they can move money around or tell you not to move money around. When I look through the last 6 months of history, which is the most that Wells Fargo would allow me to do, there was very little activity happening in those two funds. You could see the fees coming out quarterly. You could see automatic reinvestment of dividends. You could see some miscellaneous trades happening here and there, mostly when it appeared that a check request had been submitted and stocks were sold or purchased to make that obligation. What concerned me, though, when I looked a little bit deeper, was what the apparent investment strategy is for the two funds. And it doesn't appear that either one of those funds has an apparent investment strategy. And if it does, do the beneficiaries of those trust funds know what the investment strategies are, and are they in agreement with them?
Exactly. You have read my mind, Walter, because I had written on my notes, and you're gonna have to switch my glasses so I can read my notes, that I think, as things stand right now, that we trustees of the trust funds need two things. Number one, we need to review the paperwork that accompanies the Blake Memorial Fund and the Memorial Park Fund, because there is paperwork, and I haven't found it. I am not aware of where it is. I'm making an assumption that it might be up in what I'm calling the Scribner room at the library, where there's a tremendous amount of records, not necessarily all in order.
Sure.
But if I had, we both need to read through the paperwork on this to find out what the parameters are of this, because benefactors often have stipulations on how the money can and cannot be spent.
Right.
So we need to review that. We need to find the paperwork. And then I think that we need to, this is true for both the Memorial Park Fund as well as the Blake Fund. And once we have our hands on the paperwork, and there's a possibility it could be at town hall, that we need to meet, we as trustees of the trust funds need to meet both with the fire department, and then also with the Memorial Park trustees, perhaps two separate meetings. Invite them to one of our meetings to discuss with them what the paperwork says on it, which, you know, may be news to them. I mean, I haven't seen the paperwork, and I have a feeling I'm not that special. There's probably a lot of people that haven't seen the paperwork. And I would like to know what that says, and I want them to know what it says. And then I agree with you wholeheartedly. We need to ask the firemen, we need to ask the Memorial Park, what are your needs? What do you need from this money? And explain to them, you know, no, you know, you can't get that much out of it, or, you know, this is a rough estimate on the kind of earnings, you know, we could produce from this money, you know, over time. And I think if everybody understands that, you know, we'll be in a much better position.
Yes. Yes.
So I would say then going forward, I'm going to start my to-do list. Number one, I'm going to try to track down the paperwork on Memorial Park and Blake Fund. I'm writing this out, Memorial Park and Blake Fund paperwork. I'm going to track down this. I've tracked down, and this we'll get to shortly, paperwork I can and cannot find. And I have ways of doing this. I have a contact at the state, the Charitable Trust Division, and the state has been very helpful, Audrey.
Excellent.
And so there, I have so few places I know where to begin, and that will be for our next meeting. I hope to have some of that paperwork, you know, to have shared that with you, so that we know exactly what the do's and don'ts are of this as we can go forward. I think as things stand right now with Wells Fargo and its investments, I don't know, do you feel that you want to get the money moved, you know, now? What is your feeling on how long it could stay at Wells Fargo?
My understanding is if we move it to another investment house, if it's done well, they will buy everything or transfer everything in kind. So we wouldn't take losses. Right. I would like us to do that sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable leaving the money with Wells Fargo.
Okay.
I don't think that they're really working in the best interest of the trust. They're collecting their fees. You know, what I saw on the particular day that I was looking was the market was up, I think, almost 1.5%, and that was the Dow. I think the Dow was up 1.2, and the S&P was up 1.6, or maybe the S&P was. But I was looking at two broad indexes. All right, so you know, the overall market today was up almost 3%, I believe. And you know, okay, so some of these funds have more conservative investments associated with them, so the change is going to be a lot smaller. But overall, I think that these funds can be performing better and should be performing better, and certainly much more balanced to meet their particular objectives. And that really doesn't take a gargantuan effort, especially for a portfolio of the size we're talking about.
Right.
And I really, you know, okay, so you look at that 1%, say 1% of that current balance, $223,000. We're talking about Wells Fargo extracting $2,200 a year just for the privilege of our using their, you know, our investing their money with them, or investing the town's money, and these bequeaths to the town. I really think that putting the money somewhere else can work harder. I think that putting it with another investment house also opens up new opportunities for mutual funds that are better performing mutual funds with much lower expense ratios. Mm-hmm. We could discuss further the need to have a financial advisor. We could do without a financial advisor at Wells Fargo. But mm-hmm. overall, I've not been terribly impressed with the selection of funds that they offer. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as we talk about the selection of funds and what's available, certainly everything would need to be vetted through the town's investment policy.
Yeah. Well, actually, yes and no. And okay. This is something that I will put on our list for our next meeting. There is, and this is required, I think annually, and I have a copy of it, which I can get to you. The Attorney General's office, I think that's the office. We have to file annually. The trustees of the trust fund has to file annually the investment policy, and, okay. And the town investment policy that covers CRFs basically.
Okay, so these private.
The private ones, and I have a copy of the investment policy for the Ashland trustees of the trust fund. It's pretty, broad and, basically okay. Prudent man rule, And there's nothing right. that, and I've made this very clear from the beginning, nothing violates the prudent man rule. Okay. Yeah, Kathleen has a question. Yes. Oh, you're muted, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen. Can we hear you?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're referring to the charitable trust, which
charitable trust.
Yes. The town investment policy we did update 3 meetings ago. There were no changes, but you should have the document with a new review date on it.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's been processed yet, but what you're talking about in Wells Fargo are charitable trusts. And
right.
You don't have to follow the town investment policy.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
So what I will do on that, Walter, is I've got this on my list. I will get that to you. I'll have to look through my files on my computer. Okay. I ended up calling I think I called the Attorney General's office to get it. But anyway, I called them last year to get it because my emails were not being returned by other trustees. So sure. Anyway, I have a copy of it and I can get that to you. And that is something that we would need to review and, decide if we want to, what we want to change. It's pretty broad. I mean, when I read it, it wasn't anything that said like, oh my goodness, this is scary. It's pretty broad.
Right.
So we can have that at our next meeting. So as you think about moving the money then at Wells Fargo, do you have any ideas of where it would be, better held?
Well, I think that, some of the larger investment houses that are out there, they can offer some value to us and to the beneficiaries of these trusts with very low fees. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got to go. We've got a medical coming in.
Okay, we'll meet later. This is it for the night. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll work on the minutes. Take care.
And so our meeting is now ended because I no longer have a quorum. Walter is called away on a call with the fire department. I will post and schedule a meeting hopefully for next week, at which time we will finish our business.